Welcome back to Adventures with Rosie. Now today I'm going to show you how to make this, a DIY rock tumbler for polishing rocks. So if you're a new viewer, welcome along to the channel. My name's Bronson, and if you're a returning subscriber, you probably know that myself and my wife and our 3 kids, we lived in our caravan, our RV, for a year and a half down in the South Island of New Zealand. We took a year off, we travelled around in our caravan, and along the way we visited a lot of cool beaches. But what that meant was that we amassed a lot of rocks in the caravan, and not just a few, I'm talking like buckets full of rocks from all our travels. We have some amazing rocks in here. They've been sitting in this bucket in the locker of the caravan. We dragged them all around the country. We've actually got 2 buckets this size of rocks. So I thought today we would build a rock tumbler and try and polish some of these rocks up. And yeah, there should be some beautiful rocks in there, some greenstone and that sort of thing. Now I did look online and there were some sort of hobby-sized rock tumblers you can buy. I know National Geographic do quite a popular one you see on Amazon, which is a little cylinder that sits on a motor, and you basically program in how long you want that to run, and it sort of runs. Kind of quite small. What I thought I wanted to do is try and scale that up a bit. Similar principle. Basically what we're going to do in a nutshell is we're going to take a piece of 100mm PVC pipe. We're going to chop this down and make some barrels out of it. And on one end, we'll put an end cap, screw cap on the other. And the idea is that we want to put our rocks in there and our grit or our polishing compound, and we want that thing to spin. The way we're going to make it spin is by putting it on 2 bits of steel rod like that on some bearings, and we'll put a motor at one end. And the principle is pretty similar to, I guess those machines that cook hot dogs, right? That rotate, and then therefore the hot dog spins and you'll cook it. So that's the plan. I should also say this is the first iteration of this. No doubt this is going to change and I'm going to tweak this as I go. But if you are watching this and you have any bright ideas or anything you think, hey, why is he doing that? Or he's about to electrocute himself by doing that, leave them in the comments. Any questions, queries. We'll get into some of the detail around the decisions of some of the things I bought for this. But yeah, if you've got any tips, ideas, criticisms, anything like that, fire away in the comments and we can talk about them there. All right, what parts do we need? So this idea starts with a piece of pipe, basically. There's a lot of different things you can use to make your barrels, essentially. I've just bought a piece of 100mm PVC. This is the slightly thicker PVC. This isn't the stormwater, down pipe. This is the thicker one. Kinetic DN 100 it says on it. I'm going to chop this up and make a couple of barrels, and I want to make a couple of barrels so that we can run different grits at the same time. Probably do 2 barrels to start off with, and then if we're going through the 4 stages of polishing, we don't have to do 4 separate chunks. We could have stage 4 running for one and 3 running for another, if that makes sense. We should be able to make it a little bit more efficient. One end is going to have a screw cap. So we'll glue this on in a bit, and the other end will just have a standard PVC end cap, push-on end cap, which we'll glue on as well. So I'm going to make 2 of those barrels. Now to make the actual mechanism here on this board that's going to roll them, I've got these 2 steel rods here, and I just got these off like a Trade Me here in New Zealand, which is kind of like eBay, I guess, for those of you in America. Those are meter-long lengths, and we've got 2 of those. They're going to sit on some bearings. So I bought 6 pillow block bearings, these little guys here. These were very cheap. I bought cheap bearings. They do feel quite cheap. They are very lightweight. I'm not sure what sort of metal that is that they're made out of. I've got 6 of these. The idea being that we will have 1 at each end of each of the rods and 1 in the middle. And we'll kind of use it to separate each cylinder. So we'll have a cylinder or a barrel, I suppose you could call it, between each of the bearings. So I bought 6 of those. Cheap and cheerful. I don't know how long they'll last, but I guess we'll see. Now, we also need a motor, which is this guy here, and we'll get into some more detail on the motor soon. We've got ourselves a motor. a power supply for said motor here, and we'll cover these off in more detail in a second. A speed controller to control the speed of the motor, and also some pulleys and a belt to go between the motor and this rod. The shaft of the motor is different to the diameter of this rod, so this pulley, bigger diameter bore on that side to go on the shaft, and this shorter end will go on the motor. We also made a few leads for going between the speed controller and the power supply. And I've also got a little electronics box, these sort of plastic hobby electronics boxes, which we will mount this speed controller in. A bit unnecessary, but we'll talk about that in a sec. So before we start building it, let's talk about motors, because the motor was the hardest part, I think, for me in terms of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I read a lot of forums of people that have built some pretty cool rock tumblers. There's some other great videos here on YouTube. Some guys have built some cool ones. One thing that seemed quite common were fan motors, like either a ceiling fan or a pedestal fan. A lot of people buying them secondhand from like a thrift store or a op shop and taking the motor out. It did seem like some of those motors in the fans don't have a casing. So some people are building their own shroud or just casing to kind of stop themselves getting electrocuted. Submersible pumps also popped up a bit. Apparently the motors in submersible pumps are quite good. There were people making smaller rock tumblers with windscreen wiper motors, and also quite a few I saw using like a bigger motor, like either a third, a half, or even a horsepower 240 volt or 110, like a mains power motor. Kind of quite big looking things. You do see a lot of those in secondhand shops. The only consideration I would have with the bigger motor, like a half horsepower or horsepower motor, is the power consumption. If you're going to leave this thing tumbling rocks for a week, those bigger motors are going to consume more power. What I ended up settling on was an e-bike or an e-scooter motor. So this is a motor that I bought off Amazon, and these are used for electric scooters. This is a 24 volt motor, and it's 350 watt output. And pretty cool looking motor. It's decent, it's heavy. It's got 4 screw holes in the bottom, so we should be able to mount it easy enough. But yeah, they seem like there's quite a few options as well for the e-bike and e-scooter motors. There's a 250 watt version of this. There was a bigger 500 watt. I think there was 150 watt as well. I settled on 350 watt because I want to run 2 of those drums, like I said earlier. And running 2 of those, or maybe even 3 in the future, is just more weight, right, that we're putting on it. It is more efficient, but we do need a bigger motor to turn that weight. So I figure this would be, yeah, a good place to start. Now, obviously, to power this thing, we need something that can give us 24 volts at 350 watts. So I bought a power supply, also off eBay, that does just that. Amazon, I think. Sorry, I bought this off. This is a Some Electric, SMUN brand. They seem to get pretty good reviews. It does exactly what I want output-wise. It actually has 3 positive and 3 negative output terminals, so you probably could run multiple things off this. But this specific model, is a S-350-24. So 24 volt output, 14.6 amps, 350 watts. So exactly what we need to power our motor. These power supplies have a little switch on the side that can switch between 115 volts or 230. So depending on where you are in the world, you can just flick the little switch. It's also got a nice little cover over the terminals. That is sort of one consideration, I guess, is that we're putting mains power into this thing. So we want to have those terminals pretty well insulated, heat shrink. Also our output, I know it's only 24 volts output, but that's still going to give you a bit of a zap. So it's got this plastic cover that once you've screwed your spade connectors in, you just fold that down and click it down. I might also in the future look at running the cables in through this board. So I've kind of made this board to mount everything on, and I might drill some holes and run the cables down under the board and back up where they need to be. So this is all super tidy. But yeah, pretty decent looking power supply, got a little fan in it. It didn't come with a cord. I had to just create a mains power cord for that, but that wasn't too difficult, so yeah, should be good. And so the third bit of our electronics puzzle, the third piece to the puzzle, is a speed controller. Now this particular speed controller I bought is pretty unnecessary. I was up late one night ordering parts off Amazon, and I thought, I'll get one with a screen that shows the RPM output. I don't know why. It's completely unnecessary. All I really needed was this little guy here, right? A little dial to adjust the speed. These are quite cheap. Even this one with the screen was quite cheap. It's also got an on-off switch. But essentially what happens is we have our power supply, so our mains power coming into our power supply. The power supply runs into here, and the motor runs out of here, and then we can adjust the RPM. It is quite handy because then we're not mucking around with trying to get the right ratio of gear to set the RPM. We can just set the RPM on here until we've kind of find something we're comfortable with. It does seem like a lot of people have different ideas about the RPM of those, but one thing I saw, people saying motor speed of about 90 RPM, but then yeah, people were sort of had different opinions on what the optimal motor speed is. This gives us options. The only thing with this is it's made to be recessed into something. So I did pick up just a plastic electronics box, and what we'll do is we will, it's got some screws in it. We will mount this on there, and then we'll mount our switches on. It'll look pretty cool on the board, but it is not necessary. I should stress that. We don't really need to see the output. We don't really need a power switch because we've got one on the wall. All we need is that bit. So I wouldn't rush out and get one of these, because then I had to buy the box and I've got to cut a hole in it. So it's just extra work. It will look cool, but it's extra work. All right, enough talking. Let's build this thing. So we're going to start with our rollers. And then I'll wire them up, we'll get it all going, and then we will build our PVC chambers to sit on the top. I think I said earlier I've made this plywood board, just an old sheet of plywood with bits of 50mm or 2x2 timber around the bottom. I just kind of wanted a nice platform I could screw everything into, and being wood, then we can shuffle things around. I think what we're going to do as well is shuffle this down one end of the board, and we're going to do that so that we can fit our motor on one end, have space for the motor, power supply as well. So we might kind of shuffle it up like this. I'm just going to tack everything in with screws for now, and then we can sort of unscrew things and move them around as we need to. So these bearings have little grub screws in them that you just undo with an Allen key. For some reason they are all done up tight, so I can't get them on the shaft. But yeah, we'll go 3, 1 on each end like that, 1 in the middle, roughly in the middle, doesn't need to be perfect, and then 1 on the end. We will leave a bit of overhang on this end on the shaft to attach our pulley to later on, our gear, but this end can be pretty flush. So you can see kind of spacing this out. We're going to end up with some pretty nice cylinder sizes. That's probably a foot, 14 inches maybe. So I'll have a nice one sitting there, one sitting there. The other thing we need to try and figure out is how far apart we set these, because obviously if they're too far apart, they'll sit down low like that, and it might not spin like we want it to. If we put these too close together, it's going to be sitting just on top of them, and it might be liable to roll off either way with that weight. So we need to kind of play around and figure out how far apart these need to be, which is also a reason why I'm just screwing them onto wood, and then we can come back and adjust them if we need to. So we'll try and, I guess, using the end cap as reference, we'll figure out how far apart to have them. Well, that took a little bit longer than I hoped, because what I realized is that I bought this gear, I think I got this off AliExpress for the end of the shaft, but with this bearing mounted straight to this board, it wasn't high enough to get this gear on. So I had to get some little bits of wood and just basically build up them so that this will now fit on. I might actually mount it that way, and there's enough clearance under there. So what we're going to do next, belt like so, and motor probably facing this way, like so, on a gear there. I realize it might be quite hard to get the tension of this motor right. There are just screw holes. So I think what I'll do is put the I'll take this cog off the motor that's on there currently, and I'll put on the other little gear, which is somewhere around. There's another little gear. I'll put it on there. I'll try and set the tension right, and then just screw it in, and then hopefully not have to adjust it too many times, or I'm going to end up with 40 screw holes in this bit of plywood. Where is that gear gone? This one, little one here. So same sort of thing. I'll take that off, put that on the shaft, do that up tight. I haven't done any of the grub screws up on the bearings yet. I'll just want to get everything sort of dry fit. Then we'll test out the electronics. I'm going to have to mount the power supply here somewhere. I'm thinking, I don't quite know how to mount that yet. And my little on-off switch power box as well. So that's the next step. Alright, so motor is mounted. Pretty happy with how it looks. I don't know if there's enough or too little tension on the belt. There's a little bit of play in it. It doesn't feel like it's going to skip, but what I did is just put one screw in each side of the motor for now, and then we'll put it under load and shuffle it back and forth and sort of get that tension right. What I really probably should do is mount this motor on some sort of board of wood that I can then maybe adjust. Maybe it has some bolts that go through that allow for some adjustment. Might make it easier to get it off in the future. So yeah, 2.0, I'll do that in the next version. The next piece of the puzzle around here will be the speed controller. I think, like I said up the top, I bought this because it looks cool. I also bought this hobby plastic box to insert it in. I had to cut this square out. I thought, you know, it'd look quite cool. You got your power button there, almost like a nuclear launch button. You got your little dial there, screen in there, you know, screws in there. This was an absolute pain to cut out, and right as I got to the end, I actually cracked it and cracked that part. So yeah, a little bit frustrating. So what we basically need to do is take the wires from the motor and put them into the motor side, and then my power leads that I've created somewhere, which run back to the power supply. Then we'll put it in this box and we will mount that box there. So it's really simple, like I said earlier, to wire up. The motor runs into the speed controller and they're marked on the bottom as motor. Power cables come out of the speed controller running into the power supply, and then power supply into the mains. So pretty straightforward. It's got a little power on-off switch as well as the speed controller, just for fun, just for looks. So yeah, I'm going to get this all wired up now. I'm going to do some more cutting on this little box and get this all flush mounted, and then should be good to test it out. All right, so time to wire the speed controller into the power supply now. So this power supply has 3 positive outputs and 3 negatives. And I put spade connectors on just to make life easier. So we'll go positive there, and we'll leave a gap, We'll go negative under there. That looks good. Might need to put some sort of clip there for the cables in the future. And then my main power input is going to go down the end. We've got live right at the end. And we got neutral right next door. Now I'm going to fire this up in a second, and then of course I'm going to use a RCD power lead in case something goes pop. Make sure those are all nice and tight. And then one thing I did like about this power supply is it has this plastic cover that flicks down and clicks like that. I might also put some sort of clamps maybe here and here to stop them being pulled that way, you know, in case someone went to move this without turning it off. But yeah, looking pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with how this is all looking. The last step is to make our barrels that are going to sit on there. Really simple. I cut my PVC pipe down. I've got the end cap end on one end and a normal push cap, and I'm going to just use a bit of, this is Marley, a New Zealand product here, but PVC solvent. Had some of that sitting around. So we'll clean all the burrs off, we'll go around each side, mix it all together, and then we're good to go. All right, moment of truth. I will plug it in and hopefully this doesn't burn my garage down. Oh yeah. There's a little power light on the power supply, 0% RPM. Here we go. It's alive! Hey! How cool is that? Let's grab, that is pretty cool, that control box, isn't it? Let's grab one of our chambers, our barrels, pop that on. For some reason, I've lost the screw caps I bought for these. The kids were playing with them. I don't know where they've gone. So, put that on there, and away we go. It's spinning. Look at that. Well, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out in the end. I did better than I thought I'd do. What do you guys reckon? Is it all right, or is it really average? I'm pretty happy with it. I guess because I've been thinking about it for ages and waiting for parts to come from overseas and things. A couple of things tweaks I'm going to make in the next week, I think. One is put some sort of grip tape or rubber tape around these edges that make contact with these rollers. Shiny plastic, slick metal. It's obviously, I'm not sure if when I put a bunch of weight in here how well it's going to perform. The commercial ones you can buy, like the hobby rock tumblers I've seen, seem to have these barrels that have rubber around the edges of them. So I'll try and do the same thing. I suppose you could cut up like an old bicycle inner tube or something as well. That might work if you can just glue that on. Another thing I am going to do is get a belt and pulley for the back end of this to run this back roller. At the moment, I've just got this back roller idling. It's not driven. What I am thinking, I've been playing around with like putting a few rubber bands on the end and sort of having a play. And when I do that, put something on the end to drive this as well as that, it spins a whole lot better. So that's what I'm thinking. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I'll do a bit of grip tape. I'll order a belt. I'll have to try and figure out a belt that's the exact size I need, or put some sort of tensioning wheel on it, might be easier. I did get those from AliExpress and they did take a week or two to come, so I might have a play with something and jerry rig something to get it going, but all in all, I'm pretty happy. Love to know what you think though. Is it cool? Was this overkill? Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll work well. The next two videos are going to be all about testing this. We're going to put some rocks in. We're going to explain the different grits and how you polish rocks. And then we're going to put it through its paces. Switch it on, leave it for a week, let it polish some rocks. I also want to have a go at polishing some glass. I need to collect some cool colored glass bottles. We'll smash them up, we'll put them in one of these, and hopefully we'll be able to smooth the glass like you'd see if you picked it up along the beach. So thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any questions, comments, criticisms, anything like that, leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you. I'll reply to you and we can chat about it down there. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video where we polish some rocks.